extend a special welcome to other folks who are not members of KESA. We are very happy that you are able to join us this evening. Now, before we get started, I would like to give you some housekeeping rules. Of course, with this kind of forum, we need to have some rules so that to ensure that the program goes on successfully and we are listening to each other, and also we are able to learn advanced conversation on race relationships in America or in the United States here. And the second one is to build bridges between African immigrants and non-immigrant African Americans so that we can work together in the fight for a more just society, because we are all aware of what has been going on. I mean, we started with COVID, and while we were still in the middle of it, we've had some major issues of injustice happening to our brothers particularly, and when that happens, it impacts all of us. So that is one of our goals tonight. And then number three, we just want to look at how we can be agents of change in our places of work by initiating social justice conversations, or just trying to be helpful whenever we are called upon, or even when we see injustices happen, how we can be able to participate in conversations that are fruitful and that will be able to build us and help all of us. And then finally, how do we initiate these conversations, particularly, and like I said, in the place, not just in the places of work, even places of worship, because most of these issues transcend work, they transcend your homes, they pretty much are all over. You cannot escape. And like we were talking earlier at the beginning, I don't know how many of you were here, but we cannot get tired. We cannot afford to get tired. And if we get tired, once we've accomplished something or accomplished the major goals, then that is probably, we could say it's acceptable, but we cannot afford to despair or get tired. Now, those are our goals for the evening. And tonight, we are very fortunate to have three excellent panelists. And what I'm going to do, I will turn this over to Professors Abala and Ongeri to introduce our speakers for this evening. So I think Dr. Abala, are you going to go first?
Unmute. Technology.
Yes, okay, you're okay. On. Go ahead.
It's with great pleasure that I introduce to you Dr. Brooksy Harrington, who is an associate professor of English and a special assistant to the chancellor at Fayetteville State University. Now, I've known Dr. Harrington for over 30 years, and please don't start counting how old we are. But this was since our graduate school days. We have kept in touch since then, and I know he has a lot to share with us on our topic at hand. And I appreciate him for taking the time to be with us tonight. So, Dr. Harrington, if you could please, in a minute or so, share a little bit more about yourself or your background with the rest of the panel so we can be able to move forward. Dr. Harrington?
I want to say I'm grateful. Judy did say that we've known each other a long time, and I have always admired Judy because she's such a scholar. And I'm very honored to be with the panelists tonight. I am an English professor by profession, but my area is African American literature and folklore, and my specialization is the aesthetics of African American music. At this point of my career, even though I've been in English and AmLit all these years, right now as an administrator and as special assistant to the chancellor, I feel like that I can make swifter changes for a lot of students and a lot of faculty and staff. this is a very serious time for me. I don't take for granted what I'm doing, and I certainly don't take for granted all of these disasters. Let me use the word disasters that we are having to deal with at the moment. So it's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harrington. So our second panelist is the Reverend Lisa Caldwell. Lisa is the pastor of St. Philip AMZ Church in Greensboro. I got to know her through a colleague of mine because we are interested in fighting health disparities. As you've seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, minority communities are the most affected. So there are so many things reflecting actually the injustice that has been there for, over the years that have led to disparities in health access. And the Reverend Lisa Caldwell is involved in that fight. So I'm really happy that she's able to join us today. And Reverend Caldwell, I ask you to unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you. It's very wonderful to be here with you all tonight. I've just been sitting and listening to the wonderful conversation. We don't really have ties other than where we are right now because we're all bonded together in this hour. I do a lot of work with disparities when it comes to health and equity, but we're in a different season right now. I've been in pastoral ministry for 20 plus years. And in case you're not familiar, that AMEZ stands for African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. That's the organization that I do belong to. We have global presence in parts of Africa. We have 2 African bishops as well. We reach across all of the continents. I am glad to be here tonight. I am a graduate of the North Carolina A&T State University, as well as Hood Seminary here in North Carolina. I'm actually in the writing part of my doctoral work at this time. Work with some other groups, other ministers, one in the city called the Pulpit Forum, which is very involved in what is going on around us. We are part of our church community and the community around us. So this is touching home in so many ways because we are community and our congregations as family. So I'm glad to be here tonight and glad to take part.
Thank you, Reverend Caldwell. So our third panelist is Isa Obonyo Waganda. He's a Kenyan who lives in Minneapolis and works for the University of Minnesota, but he's also a human rights activist. So he was recently interviewed by the BBC and somebody shared the clip of that interview with me. So when I saw him, I'm like, this is somebody who needs to really talk to us. So I reached out to him and I'm thankful that he agreed to join our panelists today. So Mr. Obonyo, could you introduce yourself, unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, thank you very much. And I'm glad that you invited me here. My name is Isaka Obonyo Waganda. I originally come from Kenya, as you all know. I went to high school there, Sarai Boys Center, and I went to, I studied structural engineering in Kenya. And when I was there, I got interested in the work of equal rights and justice when I took on the mantle of becoming a Rastafarian, and because I thought that was very close to what I thought, or people want to fight for equal rights and justice. And so that has been part of my passion in figuring out who I am and in figuring out how that works with the system. I moved here to Minneapolis, Minnesota, here in the US. And I went back to school and I studied construction management and business administration. But I always wanted to move away from structures and building and wood and metal, and to move more into the realms of blood, sweat, and tears, because that's where my passion is. Mm-hmm. So I went to grad school and studied public policy and affairs. I have a master's degree in public policy and affairs from Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota. And that's where I kind of figure out that my passion is to fight for human rights. And I have a passion in international development as far as social justice and human rights are concerned. I'm still working there as a construction project manager, but I'm more of a passion on human rights and equal representation and things like that. So I'm very, very thankful for having this opportunity to participate in this very crucial time where we're seeing a lot of, things going on in the world. And I'm glad that you invited me to participate in this forum. I'm thankful.
Thank you, Mr. Waganda. So back to you, Dr. Lubaga.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introductions. And as you can see, I told you we have an excellent panel and it's diverse. So I'm looking forward to this evening. It should be a treat for all of us. So back to the panels, what I would like each one of you to do, and probably I will start this time with Reverend Caldwell. I'd like for each one of you just to take 2 minutes and reflect on the twin pandemics of COVID and police brutality targeting Black men in the United States right now. So kind of like I mentioned earlier, we were dealing with COVID-19, and then again, not that police brutality targeting Black men is not new, but it just kind of exploded in the middle of this pandemic. So could you go ahead and take a couple minutes to reflect on that from your background and perspective, or just what is going on? What are you thinking when you hear those two sort of observe?
Thank you very much. I'd like to just start off by addressing one at a time. Let's start off and talk about COVID-19. That virus does not care about our nationality. It doesn't care about our economic status, our race, or location. That has affected all of us equally. Our churches have gone through some of the same issues that other workplaces have. We have not been able to connect with one another and making sure that we are taking care of each other. One thing about a virus like this, I think it spoke to us on equal ground, very different than the police brutality, something that we didn't just start fighting a couple of months ago. This has been going on for quite some time. Some of the affiliations that I am with here in the city have been having those discussions now for years and trying to work with our local government and our police department to change some things. Some of you may have read in history about the shooting by the KKK right here in Greensboro. And some of the activists did not survive, and that went down in history. So we've been fighting a very long time for this type of change and equality. One of the things that I'm still concerned about when we talk about the vaccine first, the things that we have to be concerned about is not just keeping ourselves covered, keeping ourselves, with supplies, taking care of our health, but when the vaccine, if there is one, comes available, will it be accessible to all? The other question is, will we all be treated the same in medical facilities? The haves and the have-nots. We still have insurance issues. I've even been a victim myself of not having insurance coverage. And believe me, it doesn't matter how much education you have, you are treated indifferent if you do not have insurance. So it makes me wonder what will happen to our people, even if a vaccine does come available. For police brutality, I don't know when the end is going to come. We have fought and fought, but I tell you what, we have to keep fighting We have to keep standing. We have to keep speaking up. And I know we'll go into more detail a little later, so I'm not going to take up too much time, but how long do we really have to endure being shot in the back instead of maybe in a leg or somewhere to stop the person from running? I mean, I'm not going to say that some of these situations have not been major and needed some type of force, but was it death? And was it to their back? So I really believe that we need to look at the ways in which we address situations. Not we, but police address situations. There has to be a change. How long will we get stepped on our throat? I saw a clip today about, and I can't remember his name, about one of the stars in Hollywood who had a knee placed on his neck the same way, mistaken identity, same way that our brother Floyd lost his life. So how long will we have to deal with that instead of just basic handcuffs? Many times at these scenes, you see 5, 6, 7, 8 police that show up. Does it really take that kind of force in some of the situations and the severity of how people are treated? More disheartening is how long will mothers, fathers have to tell their sons? How long will we have to be concerned about our husbands, our boys, our grandchildren, in a world that will stop them for just driving while they are the color that they are? I've seen that happen as well. Personally, we cannot stick our heads in the sand and think it won't happen to us, because it will. When it comes home, when it comes closer to our door, then we begin to be concerned and speak up. But I encourage you tonight to speak up before it hits your door, before it comes into your household. I want to share this real quickly, and then I'll let someone else talk. I don't want to take up too much of the time because I'm not watching the clock. I'm a preacher, so somebody gonna have to tell me when to stop.
Reverend? No,
Yes.
I wasn't going to interrupt, but I was just going to say we'll come back into detail on this, but I don't want to cut down on your good story. Go ahead. Yes, I'm the one keeping the time on there, and I carried away listening to you, so I didn't pay attention. But go ahead and finish your trend of thought.
I'll make it short. When I say it comes to all of our homes, I was at a place at one time where I knew it happened, but because I didn't see it happening to me, I was concerned, but I was concerned afar off. And I remember one night when I was taking my daughter to Walmart late night, she wanted products to do her hair. So because she wanted to do her hair, she had a little hoodie on. Danger, right? And I said to her, baby, I don't think you should wear that hoodie. And she did not understand. Why, Mom? Why can't my hair is a mess. And I said, not good. And between my house and 5 miles away or less, we were stopped. No reason, none, but because my child had on a hoodie. And I asked the police, why did you stop me? What was your reasoning? And he says, well, it looked like you want to cross the line a little bit. And I said, really? He didn't even walk up on my side. He walked up on my daughter's side because she had a hoodie on. This is real. It doesn't matter where you live or who you are. We should all be concerned. Thank you for letting me have that extra time.
Thank you so much for those reflections. And that's why we are here, to hear that from you. And hopefully when we get into some of the solutions, you may have to reiterate what you just said, what we need to be doing. And now I would like to move on to Mr. Obonyo. And before I move on to you, I just want to say I'm very sorry because you are right in the middle of it in Minneapolis, where all this, you're almost ground, what we call right now ground zero for this moment, unfortunately. But so my apologies to your community. And yes, we've been thinking about your community as well. So why don't you take 2 minutes to reflect, and we'll come back to some of the more details of the conversation later, but why don't you take a couple minutes just to talk about the twin pandemics, and if you feel like you probably need to spend more time talking about what just happened in your city that is acceptable to you, can go ahead and do that. So welcome, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for giving me that opportunity. When COVID-19 hit, I was wondering what would happen if it gets here. It started as a joke, or it started like, okay, that was just a Chinese thing. And then it crossed borders into Europe, and then it got into the US. And when everything started getting shut down, that's when I really realized that this is a very, very, very serious pandemic. I think none of us have never gone through anything like this, because the last one was 100 years ago. And not even my mother, who's in her 80s, had seen anything like this. And so we were very concerned about how it would affect people. And for me, I was mostly concerned about how it would affect the minorities, Black people. They tend to be the ones who work in essential jobs where you cannot necessarily work from home. We tend to, for us who are now quote unquote professionals, we can move into a space in our kitchen and find a way to still continue to work and earn. But I was concerned about the majority of those people who not only here in the US, but also in Africa, who live from so-called hand to mouth, and who have to go out there every day and to make a living or to try to figure out a meal for the day. So when the statistics started coming out in New York and we're thinking of 2,000 deaths a day, for us, it was mind-boggling. It was absolutely unimaginable that I could even hear such kind of stories. It's a stressful thing. And we were very concerned. And then we started hearing that it's disproportionately affecting African American and minorities, who are the essential workers in the first place. Some of the first image that we saw was a bus driver in New York who was just driving a bus during the day, and somebody coughed on him, and 2 weeks later he was gone. And I was saying, wow, this thing is real. We have to take this very, very seriously. I know some of us tend to be a little bit casual, but it made me know that this is something that's very, very serious. And I was also got concerned with how it affects Black people, because the statistics were coming out that the essential workers and people of color are the ones who are being affected by COVID. So it is also something that needs discussion, and to figure out how best to mitigate any kind of those pandemics in the future, and also deal with what we're dealing with right now, to figure out what can we do right now with what is at hand. And so when it comes to police brutality, when the night that George Floyd was killed, I was with my youngest daughter. If you saw that BBC interview, I was sitting with her, and she also expressed, she was very passionate in talking about what she thinks. And the first thing that came into my mind is, that could have been me. That could have been my brother. That could have been my son. And the way it was so casually done was almost freaky. It was like somebody with his hands in a pocket and literally snuffing out a brother's life. I had never seen such a horrific thing in broad daylight. And so it was traumatic for me. It was traumatic for my family. It was traumatic for my kids. And we decided we're going to protest. We decided we're going to do all that we can to make sure that our voices are heard. And I know this is a process that is going on right now to address that particular issue. But I think to most of us who have come from somewhere else, maybe might not necessarily have encountered police brutality in that way. But I also know that we are all Black people, whether we come from the continental Africa or whether we are here. When the police stops you, they don't think you're a Nigerian or you're a Kenyan or you come from South Carolina or you come from Minneapolis. They look at a person who's driving, you're a Black man, you're an African, well, it doesn't matter. You're a Black person, they're gonna target you. And so for me, that was really brutal, and it made me know that it's about time that all of us speak up in order to make a change that will bring about, that will make that don't happen again, and we make sure that people are held, people have accountability, and that they're held to bear, that they're held at a certain standard, that they don't behave like that. And to also realize that we are people. There's no difference between me. We all cry blood, we all have red blood. And so there's no reason for somebody else to treat me like that. Of course, for some of us who have had the chance of looking into this academically and looking at the historical context, we definitely know where this comes from. It comes from the days of slavery. It comes from the days of colonialism from us in Africa. The only difference that the people who are in America here, who are brought up from their homeland, but for us who stay there, we're also subjected to almost the same kind of treatment in our own homes and in our own yards. And so having that historical context kind of helped me to put it in perspective, but also helps me figure out what can be done about it. And so that is what I'll talk about in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. And next, Dr. Harrington, could you also just take a couple minutes to also talk about the twin, what we're now calling twin pandemics of COVID-19 and the police brutality?
Sure. I want you to know that the University of North Carolina is one of the largest university systems in the world, and we are closed. It says to me that COVID-19 is a great common denominator. Now, the concern about the disease and the germs, the concern is real. I can't help but reflect and wonder if, in fact, there was an opportunity for us to know about it and to prepare better for this oncoming pandemic. Someone is responsible, and I don't ever want to forget that, because people have died, we all have suffered. This is a new kind of lifestyle, and being at the university, someone has to do something with the students. Young people came here for an education, and to turn them away at this time and to not have an answer, and for us to just be sort of trying to piece it together, if you please, is not fair to the administrators, not fair to the faculty, the students, anybody involved with the university. Talking about this COVID-19, to just look at the numbers and then to be influenced by our chief administrator, who exemplifies danger in his conversation and in his action, is those things are very disheartening. The fact we were talking sort of jokingly before about maybe using a disinfectant of some kind for medicinal purposes, that's not funny. And the university system, you know, everybody comes to the university to learn. We teach everybody else. I like to say that the university is the top of the mountain. So to be victimized by COVID when it could have been perhaps lessened is just really heartbreaking. Let me transition and say this, even though it's obvious. I'm a Black male, so I can speak first-handedly for many other Black men who've been stopped unnecessarily, who have been victimized by the law, and even more specifically, George Floyd's stepmother is part of my performing group here in North Carolina. She's part of my group on this university campus. She's an employee at Fayetteville State University. So this episode came near and dear to me. And maybe a little closer than I wish it would have, but it did occur here. So when it comes to talking about the episode that involved George Floyd and other African-American men, it's almost tearful for me to talk about, because I don't care what anybody says, it's real. It's not pretending, it's not making up something. We saw the life snuffed out of George Floyd, but not only him, others. So that's a way for me to begin, to commit, to try to start to talk about how these kinds of horrible episodes, COVID-19, and the abuse of Black people and the law. These are ways for me to begin to express how they affect me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harrington, and we are very sorry to hear about how close this was to you personally. Usually we'll have a panel and sometimes you don't realize how what we are going to discuss impacts people or how close it really gets. And for you, it was very close to home. Now, I'd like to transition to our next step where all three of you panelists, I'm going to ask that each one of you take about 5 to 6 minutes or so to discuss some very specific topics that I'm going to read out to you. And so with this, why don't we start with you, Mr. Obonyo? I'd like for you to share your experience as a professional African immigrant and as a human rights activist. And particularly, I want you to share with us how it's been, and you've shared some of it already, but just to expand on what has been going on and how your work can translate, has really probably translated to this, but particularly, what is your advice for how African immigrants in the US can engage with regard to advocacy for change, since that seems to be an area that you're, as much as you're an engineer, but you found another path into this area of human rights and advocacy. So just talk about your experience and then share with us how we can get to join you in your work.
I think for most of us who come into the United States, of course, we're aware that we're aware of slavery, we're aware of systemic discrimination, but we may not necessarily have experienced it. Where we come from, everybody's Black, and so it is not necessarily a color of the skin issue. It might be something else. It could be tribal, and which could be equally devastating if you think about it. But when we come into the United States, then that's when you really figure out that you're being treated differently simply because of the color of your skin. I'm a Black person, I'm a Black man, or a Black woman, or a Black child. So we have to look at many areas. First of all, when we come here, we want an opportunity, we want to go to school, we want education. And for some of my experiences, I started experiencing right away. When you go to college, you'll find that you'll have to work a little bit harder to be treated equally. I had issues with some of my professors who kept giving me C's, even if I thought I was an A student or I thought I was doing a very good job, but I couldn't get past a C. And I was wondering, is there something I need to do? Do I need to call for help, or do I need to go back to English 101 to write English better? I don't know. But then I really figured out that there was a problem, and the problem was just, discrimination, where even within the academic circles, you run against some of those kind of experiences where it starts in class, where you are working very hard, but a professor thinks that you're not material to make it, you can't make it. And of course, I came from some of the best schools in Kenya. And so it appeared to me that that was going on when we, during the end of the semester, we had to have a peer review, and everybody else thought I wrote well, gave me A's, but the professor still gave me a C. So I did realize that there is bias, there's discrimination even within the education system. So we have to be aware of those kind of biases to protect ourselves. I wanted to have time where I would go and say, this is the only C that I got, and I don't realize why I'm getting only this C. And I wanted to take time to go and complain and all that. But then I realized, you know what, I'm just wasting my time. I don't have time to go haggle with it. I will take it, but then it will open my mind to those kind of situations coming up in my other classes. So that's when I started realizing that these things affect us in more ways than we know. We also have to realize too that the work that we do, if you go out there and start looking for a job, it's going to be an uphill battle if you're an African or a black man or something like that. They might just look at your name and you don't even get called in for an interview. And I did realize that because, you know, you'd send so many resumes and you don't get it, or you don't get in. And if you do, you might get it into the lower ranks and everything, which is expected. So I say, you know what, I'm willing to start anywhere so long as I get a foot on the door. So I also realized that within myself, I'm compromising myself, or I'm compromising ways in which I value myself just to get into the door. If you all listen to Bob Marley music where he asks, how many rivers do I have to cross to get to see the boss? Those are the kind of things that opens up my mind and to think about my own experiences when it comes to work. Well, I had a very serious experience. I was in construction management class, and I graduated with honors. And this other person is a Caucasian fellow, is a white person. He barely made it, C's, D's, and then we happened to go into the same company. Within a year or two, he was my boss. And I was wondering, how did this happen? How did this happen? You know, I come out of college with honors, but so-and-so barely made it out of school. And here he is, they're asking him to be my boss and to take my time to me to report to him. And I said, no, wait a minute. No, it doesn't happen like this. We came here at the same time. I think we have the same rank, quote unquote, rank, where we deserve the same kind of respect or the same kind of job or the same kind of, recognition. So I said, no, I don't think this is right. I don't think this person needs to be my boss. I came from school with him. I think I was better qualified to do this job than him. And then what happened is within a month or two, my position was being eliminated. And so they said, well, we are going in a different direction now. We are moving to a different town, and I don't think we're going to need your, I was doing survey engineering at that time, so I don't think we're going to need your services right now. The white dude, if I may use American English, the white dude who I was working with ended up being transferred to be the head of that division for that company. So when you look at this kind of experiences that we have, you will know that this is real. There are certain things that might be keeping away, but that might be kept away from us, not necessarily for anything else, but because you're a black person, you're a black man, or black woman, or a black kid. So it is in all around our lives. If it's in education, if it's in work, you know, even amongst our communities, amongst our family. I was driving around with my kids, with my dog, with my children, and I had been given a pendant by my daughter at that time. They were little at that time. My last born is 17 years now, but they were little at that time. So they had given me a pendant, and I usually hang it on my rear view mirror. There is a law in Minnesota says that you shouldn't hang anything on your rear view mirror, and I wasn't aware of that detail of the law. So I got stopped, and we were all wondering. I was not necessarily driving fast. I wasn't doing anything, but I was stopped with all the lights glaring and with hands on almost on the gun. And I was wondering, and the kids are scared, and I was wondering, why did he stop me? What's going on? Then I said, license and registration. I said, why did he stop me? Then he says, no, license and registration. I said, okay, well, here's my license and registration, but I'd like to know why you stopped me. Then there was nothing on my record, there was nothing. And then he says, it's against the law to have something on your rear, to hang a pendant on your rear view mirror. I said, what? That's why you stopped me? This kid is scared. You come here holding your gun and you told me it's against the law to have something hanging on my rear view mirror. So take that off. Then of course it was just a pendant. So I took that off the rear view mirror and say, here, you can go. So some of this experience, you realize that it's in your schools, it's in your work, it's in the community. So we have to be just aware of those kind of biases. And when it happens, you know exactly what's going on, so they're not caught, you're not caught, you know, sleeping, or you really know what's going on, that these guys, they mean well and they don't mean well, and they're looking for every single thing they can to bind you or to put you at a disadvantage. So that is some of the things. I could go on and write a book about some more of the egregious experience, but I'm sure all of you have experienced a few of those things, and yield the time so that so that you also can talk about your own experiences. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just want to mention that I see a lot of comments crawling through what you are speaking. So I'm sure we'll get quite a few questions, and a lot of people share the experiences that seem to be similar to yours. Now, why don't we move to Reverend Caldwell? And the question, or some things that I would like for you to reflect on is, we're aware that dominantly Black churches and faith-based communities are the bedrock of African-American community. So why don't you share with the audience the kind of initiatives that all Black Americans should engage in to advance social justice? Because as you heard from Mr. Bonyo, they look at you, I mean, they don't know whether you're from Kenya or Nigeria or some other country, they just see you as Black. So we are all in it together. And I kind of liked what he said in terms of how we need to be aware. Developing an awareness is very important. So what else can you share with us in terms of what we should be doing?
Thank you. I have 4 specific things that I do want to share in that area. But before I say that, I want to just make this statement. Many times when we have these discussions with city officials, many times the question will come back, what is the ask? What is it you want from us? And I think in summary, the bottom line is to be treated fairly when we buy homes, when we live in neighborhoods, when we get jobs, to have those same opportunities to hold those same positions regardless to who we are. We've studied, we've practiced, we bring skills to the table, and we should have those equal opportunities. We just ask for you to treat us fairly. And when it comes to justice, treat us by the law and not by the color of our skin. That is the ask, point blank. So let me go on to say this. What can we do? Let's work together first and try to get rid of the race divide. And I'm not just talking about the divide among Black and white. I'm talking to my brothers and sisters here tonight on this call. We can do better at coming together. You have African Americans that were born here, and that's all we know. Then there are you of African descent, maybe was born in your homeland, on your continent, you migrated here, but once we got on this fertile ground, we were all equal in what we have to deal with. So we need to try to close that divide first. I have to say, even in my own ignorance, it didn't teach me in the history classes or the Black history. When I was taught Black history, I was taught how my ancestors came here on slave ships, not the richness of the continents of my brothers and sisters. That was not what I was taught. So this year, one of my members of my church had looked up her background and found out that her people came from Cameroon. And we had some of our friends from Cameroon to come into the church to educate us about their homeland. They spoke to us about continents. I've even done some of the crazy things that she talked about, not even thinking about it. For us here in America, it's like asking me, because I'm from America, if I know someone that lives in Hawaii, just because they're Black. And I know you've seen that. You're from Africa, so someone will ask you, oh, do you know so-and-so? Okay. Realizing that everybody don't know everyone, for one. We come from different backgrounds, different places, different continents, different environments, okay? We have to close that divide and come together as a people. We have too much separation within ourselves. That session was absolutely wonderful, and we're going to do more work together because she was able to share the hindrances and some of the challenges of the homeland of Africa, wherever you're located on the continent, wherever you are. She shared some of those things and even the belief system about what America would be like. So that's one of the main things. And I'm glad I'm a part of this conversation tonight, because I don't think we really realize how close yet separated we are. And we need to do something about that. We need to share more. And I'm opening my doors. We've carried the name African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it and let's learn about each other. So the other thing is use your voting rights. We do have power. And so when it's time to vote, when it's time to educate those around us about voting, and actually go into our communities. That's one thing the church does. In our congregates and communities, we are involved in voting. We get the information out there so you will understand what people are talking about, persons that cannot get to the polls, whatever the situation is. We have to get involved with helping others get to the polls. I will never forget my I think she was 95 at the time, year-old mother. I took her to the polls and she got to the opportunity to vote for President Obama. It brought tears to my eyes because that was a day at 95 I'm sure she never thought she would see or be able to participate in. She's seen a lot of things being born in 1918. So let's use our rights, our voting rights. Let's use the power that we do have. One of the other things is the economic power. That's something else we can do. I have seen, and I hope that many of you are familiar with the upcoming, upcoming idea to utilize our economic power on Juneteenth, which is June 19th, to not buy from the department stores. And then for the 7 days after, the fast food chains, the grocery stores, we put a lot of money there. We are a big part of the economic power in this city. I mean, in this country, wherever you are. And so we have to use the power that we have and come together. Let's educate each other. Let's assist each other in doing this. I've been announcing it in my church. I will continue to announce it. I will continue to educate. Use your money wisely. If I'm going to talk to you about budgeting, I'm also going to talk to you about the power that you have economically. And the other thing that we can do is not run away, but stand with the protesters. Put on a mask and stand. We can't hide. We can't just wait to see what's going to happen, wait and see on the news what happened today. But we have to fight. We have to fight for all of our rights. Because if you don't take part, then it's basically saying, I'm okay, and I agree with what's going on. So the churches, especially the denomination I'm in, very involved in the community and what goes on around us. We have to be concerned about our congregants. Even if I'm not going through it, if one of my congregants is, then it affects me as well. So we have to be concerned about community and get involved, find out what's going on and be a part of what's going on. We cannot foolishly just run out and cause problems with the protests, but go and stand for the rights that we're fighting for and speak up and be a part of what's happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Reverend. I don't know which one of those to comment on. You've really challenged us. And when we get to the Q&A, I'm sure we have plenty to talk about. But particularly one thing you just said that I've been thinking for a while is the fact that, yes, we are not united as Africans and African Americans. I'm glad you just kind of laid it out there on us. And there are some areas where people have done a better job and others haven't. So my brothers and sisters who are here tonight, you've just told us as it is, and we appreciate that. So when it comes to question and answer, I want to hear some more of that. So now we are moving on to Dr. Harrington. Now here is what I'd like for you to share with us. Why don't you talk a little bit about your own experience and challenges being a Black man in the United States and in different phases of your life and your career? You're probably one who has encountered pretty much everything directly. And as your mothers, brothers, and sisters feel some of it, but you probably will give us how it has been for you. So why don't you go ahead and share that with us? And then I just want to mention to everybody, after Dr. Harrington is done, we will take a brief break at that time. So just be patient with us. Thank you.
Well, now, I am about to be 60 plus years old, which means that I can speak firsthand about a lot of things. Let me start. This comes to my mind immediately. I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill at 17 or 18 years old. And I remember while I was there, I took a biology class. And I don't know why this comes immediately to my mind, but it does. I took a biology class and I had a professor, a female Caucasian lady named Dr. Mish. And I struggled in that class. And I went to see her and I asked her for special help. I went to see her 2 or 3 times and she sort of brushed me off. And she told me, she said, well, Brooks, she said, you just need to study, And she said, I'm going to give a midterm and a final. And I made a C or a D on that midterm, and I was scared. I went back to her, and she allowed me to stand in line until she chose to have enough time to speak to me. Now, I want to say, while I'm telling you this story, I didn't have the ammunition to fight with then that I have acquired at this stage in my life. I was young and I wanted to remain in school and I was scared. So when I went to her the final time, she said, Mr. Harrington, have you ever thought about that Carolina may not be the place for you? And that really destroyed me. It made me feel so badly because I knew I was as smart as others, probably smarter than many of the other people in that class. And those kinds of experiences, that's just one of many that I've had to experience as I evolved through. Now, remember that I stayed in that sort of arena. And I think I acquired 2 degrees at Carolina. I acquired 3 degrees at Ohio State University. And you know, you just have to be determined. I don't know any other way to put it, but you just have to be determined. But I was thinking, there is an article that just came across my memory that's called Black Men in Public Spaces. And in that article, it talks about Black men pulling up to the traffic light and could hear the locks being locked by the passenger beside them in the next car, and how vividly things like that to make you reflect on you being different from the white race will occur. Now, when you apply for a job, or when you enter a building, or when you walk in a room and it becomes silent, the conversation becomes silent, it hints to you that you must be the subject of conversation. I've been a victim of those kinds of things. But as I said to you earlier, as I evolved through all the kinds of things I've had to evolve through, I gained some skills or some survival. I don't know if they were skills. I gained some survival mechanisms as I became older that I didn't have when I was 18 and 20 and 25 and 30 and 40. Now that I am where I am chronologically, I'm not afraid. I'm not bashful about calling things out that are not fair. And I also want to say this. Sometimes we have been unfair to each other amongst our own race. And we could do better. I was reading today in Micah, the book of Micah, where it says to do justice and to love mercy. I mean, just to me, just means to be fair. We need to be fair with each other. And I think if we're fair with each other, let's demand that others, I don't care what color you are, but we need to call it what it is. And as a personal experience, one thing that I know is uncomfortable, has been uncomfortable over the years, and it's still uncomfortable. And that is for us to come together and talk about our differences. For us to come together and talk about, you can't get any help until you recognize that you have a problem. We have a problem. America, the world has a problem. If you don't believe it, you turn the television on and see how many people across the world marked last week. All kinds of people and all ages. And it just wasn't George Floyd. I know that was a catalyst. I know that may have been the impetus for some things to happen. And I'm sorry, but it was not only George Floyd. It was those brothers and sisters in our heritage, let me just say brothers, who were lynched in the town square while people put picnic baskets together and came in as if it was some sort of entertainment. That's the kind of hurt that me as a black man that I have to slumber with at night. Those are the kinds of things that I think about when I see someone advancing that has not done the sort of academic preparation that myself and others of these brothers have done. And I don't want to get too excited, but I want you to know that it hurts. I don't care if we say, oh, it's all right, I'll get over it. Yeah, but in the meanwhile, that kind of stuff hurts. And when you've seen it 64 years like I have, it makes you careful. It makes you, I want to keep on, I hope. I want to work a little while longer in this university system because someone has to stand up and declare what's right and not be afraid. And I hope that I thank you for letting me be on this panel, because I don't take it lightly. It's very serious to me. I have experienced a lot of hurt, a lot of pain that I should not have experienced because I am a Black man.
Thank you, Dr. Harrington, for pouring your heart today. You've given us something to think about, and we appreciate you being here today, sharing your experience, because it helps us grow, it helps build us, and hopefully when we come back from the break, we will get some questions and continue with this discussion. And before we leave, unless Dr. Ongeri, you know when, okay, I think the recording is on. Again, thank you very much for what our three panelists have shared this evening. Now, Dr. Bala had something to share, particularly wanted to add to her experience with Dr. Harrington when they were students at Iowa State. Dr. Bala, is that correct?
Yes, not Iowa State, but the Ohio State.
Did I say Iowa State?
Yes. Oh boy. So
for those
anyway,
who didn't know where I am, now you know why I'm too busy talking about. Did I? Okay, go ahead. The Ohio State.
The Ohio State. So Dr. Harrington and I went through the same programs, beginning with the African American Studies. By that time, it was called Black Studies, and ended up in the English department. But for me, I think one of the things that I hadn't quite understood were some of the things we talked about during our last discussion, which was institutional racism. So here we were, two Black students in the program, and we were denied the opportunity to even be given teaching assistant positions within the department. Now, they never said it was discrimination, but it was what they did to us during the final stages when we were actually working on our dissertations. And that was where we were denied an opportunity to even have a mailbox within the department itself. And we had to actually petition the chair of the department to say, hey, we are here, we are students in this program. Even if you denied us the opportunity to have a teaching assistantship, at least give us a simple thing as a mailbox so we can be able to communicate with our faculty members. Whereas all the other students really had all the opportunities, and they were white and they didn't have to fight to have something as basic as a mailbox. Now, I know that seems to be somewhat mediocre or even trivial, but it was one of those things that happen, and you have to almost take a second look to explore really what is it that is going on here. Yeah, and again, even at that particular time, we could not be able to take a course that focused on African American literature without being told, hey, if you want to study about Black people, go to the Black Studies department, and that's what they used to refer to it at that particular time. So I just thought I would share that or throw that in there in the mix of talking about this issue of discrimination, even if it's not necessarily about police brutality. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that little nugget between the two of you. But now that's a very interesting statement you just made, because I see a question here, and it was actually from you, Dr. Ongeri. Do you want to ask your question? You want to go ahead and ask your question, please?
Sure. So Dr. Harrington, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And from what Dr. Bala said, at least there were 2 of you in your department. But we hear this many times from people when you're in these big majority white schools, that professors treat students from Africa, when we come here as international students, that they treat us differently, that they treat us better than they treat the African American students. And most of the time we are not aware of that. It's now that we've been here for a longer time that we can have these conversations and hear those from our peers. So did you have that experience, and how did it make you feel?
Well, I am from the US of A. And I think that I could tell no difference in my treatment from any African, a person of African descent. There was no difference in the way I was treated than anyone from the African, born in Africa, let me put it like that. I think that Judy and I were treated equally. Now notice I didn't say equally good nor equally bad, I said equally. And what I can truthfully say is that there are days when I thought I would have thrown in the towel. That Judy encouraged me, and I think there were days when I know she wanted to give up, that I encouraged her, because we were just determined to, and we took a whole passel of extra courses. Can I add that in there? We took extra courses of prerequisites because that's what they made us do. So I can't say that I was treated any better because of my being born in North Carolina, or Judy being born in Kenya. We both had to experience some challenging times. Did I answer that?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I thank you again for the question and the answer. I'd just like to again remind everybody, unless you're speaking, make sure that you're on mute. I could hear some background noise, suspecting some people are not on mute. Any other questions? Does anybody, I haven't seen a lot of questions roll through, but there seemed to be another question. Oh yes, now I see them here. Why don't we have, Omara, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? Omara, or let me go ahead and ask. I'll go ahead and ask them.
Omara, yes.
Are you there,
Yes.
Omara? Please
Yeah,
go
I'm
ahead
here.
and ask your question.
Can you hear me? All right. Yeah. In the recent past, I've really come to realize that a lot of things that affect us every day, and including the police, these are matters that are really decided in the local governments, the city council, the township, and all those kind of, the local government. And I've come to realize that if we can also be very impactful if we actively participate in the townships, in the position, policies, and direction that they take. I do watch local government here, and sometimes you don't have a lot of people, raising any concerns. And if we are able to attend and maybe raise some of our concerns, we can easily affect change. And I was going to ask Waganda how he thinks we can do that. We can go about doing that, and what he thinks, if he thinks it's effective.
Mr. Oganda, did you understand the question there?
Yeah, you are asking the best way to go about participating in your local government policy and all that?
Yes.
Yes, I think from what I've studied in public affairs, we have to be able to participate in the community affairs where we are. I do know who my chief of police where I live. I do know who he is because his daughter went to school with my daughter. So we also have to make sure that wherever we are, we are visible. And so we can talk to the cops, we can talk to the community, we can go to the city hall when there's a petition for one or two things that you know may affect you. Like the Reverend say, like the Reverend Lisa said, we have to speak up. If you're in a community and there's a town hall meeting called and you know that they're debating about a policy issue that will affect you, but go up there and say, you know what, I don't like that policy issue because of this and this and this and this, and let your voice be heard. In that way, when that policy affects whatever affairs we are all dealing with, your voices will be heard, and they will know that it's affecting people in certain kind of ways. So, like you said, it's important that we come out of our shells, and if we're living within a community, be known in the community. If you're living and participate in the local policy discussions and the local town hall meeting, if you can. I know once in a while I've brought my daughter, or my daughter will drag me and say, we have to talk about this, we have to talk about this. And I said, yes, let's go, find 10 minutes, give your question to the local authority. Most of the time, sometimes I've been to a place where I went there and I raised my hand again and raised my hand, and I was never called for a comment. So those are the same dynamics that you also have to figure out. You might be there, you might be the only Black participant there, and then they never call you to talk about it. So sometimes you might have to stand up and say, hey, I have to say something, and just say it. If you don't, for them, not wait for them to call you, because sometimes they won't call you. So we have to also like stand up and be there and participate. And like, I like what Reverend said, speak up. So that's what I'd say about that.
May I add a comment? Thank you for saying that. To know where to go and when to go, find out more information about your city. When do the city council meet? When do your board of education meet? Sometimes they will have a space there for you to make comments, but you have to make sure you get them in on time. And there's a lot of times more power in numbers. I don't think we would be getting the attention we're getting right now if it was only a protest in one of our states. But because it's now happening all over, you got some attention. So many times some of the groups that's in your area support what the work they're already doing, and try, instead of trying to just be solo at a meeting. Because honestly, when we get to the meeting, they don't know our academic background and really don't care. So we have to come in numbers. We have to be available and know what's going on around us. That has worked in the city that I'm in. And I mentioned in the beginning, the Pulpit Forum, which is one of the groups that I'm a part of. We made a statement to the news the other day about where we stand and everything that was going on. It was clergy from all over our city. And we stood together and we made statements about what we felt about what's going on. And we followed up with letters to the police, to our city council, to our mayor. So they're just some of the ways that you can get involved.
Thank you very much, Reverend Caldwell. Actually, I was planning on calling on you to add to that discussion, so I'm glad you kind of felt me, you sensed what I was gonna say. And just one more thing to add to that, that letter writing letters to the editor, your local papers is very important. You need to be able to also share, and that adds to being known, people knowing that so-and-so always writes about certain issues, so that if something comes up, they'll be looking for you to answer questions or get involved. Or if there is something going on in the city council on zoning issues, and that is unfortunately, those are the things that most of us don't show up for. But we need to try, and I really appreciate hearing we need to get involved. It's not easy work, but what is easy after all? I mean, there's nothing easy out there. There is another question out here. Who had a question? I saw, who is it? Robai Werunga, are you there? Are you still with us?
I'm here, yes.
Yes, could you go ahead and ask your question on HBCU schools, please?
So yeah, I was curious because I see that Dr. Harrington is at Fayetteville State, which is my alma mater. So, but I'm curious about people working in HBCUs like Fayetteville State. I think there's somebody else that's at Central. As opposed the conversations right now that are going on regarding how it's beyond just killing of African Americans, but how the issues permeate in higher ed. And I, being in a predominantly white institution, I see that the conversations, because those conversations are happening and they're being raised, and it's different, you know, as a person of color trying to navigate that, and it's almost like stepping on eggshells. I'm just wondering to see how that conversation is going on in HBC. How that would be different.
Let me ask you, are you asking how is the
are you having those conversations? And if so, how are you driving them? How are you accessing, I mean, putting them out there and having the people who need to hear those conversations be receptive about it and without a fear of whatever repercussions there is?
Well, if you recall, one of the things I said in my closing comments is that we have to have the dialogue on the campus setting. And it's ironic because it was just today that the chancellor sent out a letter to the staff and the faculty telling them about a forum that we're hosting tonight that will be talking about injustices and racial injustice and social injustice and that's coming on tonight. I guess this is my answer. My answer is that the uncomfortability of those subjects yet exists. But at the university setting, we are more open to having public forums. Now there's a problem. Right now, during COVID-19, who can gather? The only thing we have is the media and the way we're doing things now. But I think that it is more open possibly right now because it's such a timely issue. Now, Fayetteville State University, as far as my involvement and as far as my memory serves me, has not been an institution that has frowned at having those kinds of forums. And it has worked. Now, when we have those gatherings, they're not only open to the university community, but the community at large. So I think we're on a positive when it comes to that. Now, here's the problem. First of all, someone has to acknowledge that we have some problems. Not only us, but persons who are involved in the infrastructure of the city and the state. We have to recognize that there are problems. And then if we are hosting such a forum on the university setting, they should not be bashful about coming, and we should not be bashful about letting them know how we feel. So I think your alma mater sort of makes you proud in that area, but we have a long way to go.
Thank you.
There is a question to all of you panelists. Someone wants to know how you can help, give that real talk to the young adult men. What's the best approach? Because some people struggle with that. And especially there's some, young men who may, like you said earlier, think it never happened to me. until it actually happens. So what's the best approach to giving that talk? Unfortunately, the talk has to be given. And I remember, you know, I tell my son, you have to do this, make sure you do this, but what's the right approach so that they take it a little more seriously than some of them probably do.
One thing is that men need to lead off in those discussions. We have a lot of absentee fathers. And that's one thing we need to take the lead in. And these organizations, these fraternities, these big brother organizations, where we have grown men who have been successful or who have navigated successfully, we need to put our foot out first.
I think to add on what Dr. Harrington said, when it comes to talking to our kids, and this is a question that we all have, and I'm sure I use that word kids lightly, you know what I mean? I mean our children. We have to realize that we got to speak the truth to their children. Let them know that there's going to be discrimination or nothing else but the color of their skin. Share with them your experiences, because they're going to find it or they're going to see it at any one time or another. So if you're raising kids, make sure that that is a conversation you have as soon as they're able to comprehend where they are and who they are. And that also helps anchor their identity. And so what I always tell people is start that conversation as early as possible. We cannot put everything under the bed and hope that they'll find it out for themselves. Share your own experience and tell them, hey, this happened to me today. This happened to me yesterday. This is what's going on. And this might happen to you, but this is how you deal with it. And this is what you take from it. And of course, it's also good to be involved in those organizations that specifically talk about what those things are and share that in an institutional kind of a setting. And I like what Dr. Harrington said, that fathers play a big role in talking to the sons. Sometimes the sons are a little bit too hardy and they don't listen to the moms. They can just overrun the mothers, and that's it. So we have to make sure that we talk to the sons, of course, as well as the daughters, but then to make sure that we are present and talk to them. I remember one of my sons called me and he told me that the two of them were being followed in Walmart. And they said every time they went around, there was a security person following them all the time. Then I told them, well, you don't need to spend your money there. You need to get out of there as soon as possible, and just get out. You don't need to be confronting this person. You've already told me that's what's going on. Just get out. So these children are going to go through this. So like I always say, please be straight with them. We cannot live in an ivory tower, so-called. And we have to make sure to let them know that we're all the same. We're all in this together. I think that's what I would say.
Can I just speak as a mother? We have to all talk, and you're right. Many times there are not men in the home. But I say to my husband, I love you and appreciate you, because having gone through and lived through some of this, you still have the strength to cover us as a family. I say to our brothers and our sisters, know who you are. You're the king's kid. You have to know that you're special. You have to know who you are, and don't let what people try to do to you or say to you be the determining factor of who you are. I say to my son, just moved back to North Carolina, and Dad and I just had a conversation with him and said, son, please don't get out and run at night. I know you live in a fabulous neighborhood, but you're still Black. Please be careful. And then I had to say to my grandson, who was looking at TV, and said, why are they doing that to him? That's not nice. And Grandma had to say, no, it's not, baby. Everybody's not nice, but we're going to be who we're supposed to be. I remember teaching my son, my grown son now, went to Walmart. Everybody seemed to be at Walmart, right? I went to Walmart, and the person at the register wanted to just hand him whatever I had bought him. And I said, no, 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 put that in a bag. Because when I go through the door with it in my hand, you'll say I'm stealing. These are little things that I had to teach him as a child and say, baby, please don't do that, because they're not going to treat you the same way.
Thank you to all of you. Rachel Boyd, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. So yeah,
Could you say something?
Yeah, that was my question actually, and I'm glad in the direction that all of you have taken in answering that. And you know, my comment was actually, you know, the fact that most of, you know, a lot of us are single moms, and I'm glad that that has been brought up in terms of how, you know, women can also take up this role. You know, if fathers are not present in the homes, you know, we are the ones to give this talk. And unfortunately, having landed here about 15 years ago, I had no idea, you know, of what these kind of talks are. You know, you think about giving your child the talk about, you know, teenage life and girls and stuff like that. And then, you know, you have no idea what this other big talk is. And so, you know, it is a struggle, especially for us immigrants, you know, with boys, and we are, you know, there are no, you know, they don't have their fathers in the home, and yet you have to give the talk. And for me, I think coming here, I knew, you know, there was racism for sure, you know, you hear about it. And, you know, it's been there. But I think this was made real and really scary with the death of George Floyd. And so, you know, it's a constant thing that as women who are living with with our boys constantly have to really, really worry about. And I just want to say thank you for those responses. And it is a big responsibility, especially for single moms with, you know, young adult men.
I'd like to make a quick comment about Lisa's response when she said that her grandson said, Grandma, that's not nice, or alluding to the hurt that those kinds of things symbolize. A lot of older guys and younger guys too, and especially the guys who are without a male figure or father, so to speak, there needs to be a confession of hurt. And somewhere along that conversational line, in addition to the violence and the unfair treatment, there also needs to be an initiative where we can talk to these young guys about, because a lot of the stuff that they're involved in is because of hurt or because they are victims of being, or will not express what's really going on inside. And when someone is brutalized at the fingers of the judicial system and also is dealing with a hurt factor, you have what is called a double and a triple whammy. And we cannot ignore that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, George, Tora, are you out there? You raised a question here that has generated quite some discussion. Are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Would you like to go ahead and ask your question, please?
Yeah, this is a really good discussion. And just before I ask, I can really relate to what all the speakers have said today. I remember coming here about 20 years ago and, you know, going into grad school. It was quite difficult. I mean, it's a situation where coming from Africa, you assume to be not so smart as compared to kids who went to university until you prove yourself otherwise. So you start from the very bottom and then you have to, you know, work yourself up. Now my question is, and sometimes we do forget, we talk really about racism in terms of racism between races, between whites and blacks, Asians and whites. Then we kind of forget talking about intra-racism, racism between blacks. And if I can talk of my experience when I came here, the first experience I had about racism was from an African American who really made me, and actually who made me really feel bad, was I was trying to join a group where she was a third-year student, and to me, me coming from Africa, I felt that she felt threatened, and she didn't really. She tried very, very difficult. She tried very hard to make me not to join that group. So I was just wondering, to all of you, has anybody ever experienced, something like that, anywhere since I've been in the U.S.? Thanks.
Just to kind of put this in context to our presenters, I think this is probably a very good opportunity for one of you to jump in and just explain the difference between racism and discrimination. Probably this may be a good opportunity for that as well, because there have been times where we tend to lose the context of each of those. So who would like to go first on that for us?
I would like to share my experience with him, if I'm allowed. Is that okay?
Yeah, just a second. I'll get to you, Otieno, in a minute. Otieno?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a second. Let's give our guests an opportunity to respond to the question, and then you can add to that if you don't mind. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I would like to add on to what George Tora has said. And that is what I was talking about, having historical contexts coming into academia in the United States. Where we come from, we don't look at the color of the skin. We're all black. The police is black, the teacher is black, the bus conductor is black, the politician is black, the reverend is black. So we have no reference, so to speak, of blackness, although we know that context. But when we come into the United States, you get to know that you are black just because of how you are being treated. And then you become aware that you are actually black. You may not have been aware of it, but now you are. Another thing is, we have to realize that we Africans coming into the United States, we have a cultural context to where we come from. And so we have different cultures and we have different representations of ourselves and how we look at ourselves. So when we come here, those cultures don't matter, you're a black man. And another thing too that we also have to realize, that amongst us, even if we are blacks, there is simple prejudices that come upon, that arise, that we might not even be aware of. So yes, there could be a little bit of a friction between Africans who come from Africa and African Americans. You might not necessarily know how to interact with them, and they might not know how to interact with you. And so I did experience that, where I would go into a party and they're all go into one corner, and I'd be left just standing there and wondering why did everybody move over there? And so those are some of the things that you have to be aware of when you come into the United States. But then once you get the cultural context of where they are and where you are in an academic kind of a way, you're going to understand that for sure. And you're going to realize that even amongst us black people, tribalism is just as bad as racism, because it's the same thing where somebody is picking on you, not for your choice of your tribe, but because you're that tribe. The same thing is somebody's picking on me because I'm black, but it's not my choice to be black. So the effect of tribalism and that black on black discrimination, it's just as bad as racism, as the black and white divide in terms of its effects. But so we also have to realize that and understand the context in which that applies. and put it in perspective. That's all I have.
I totally agree with that. Sometimes the cultural differences, and then I think also what we're dealing with is because, and I'm speaking from African American that's here and been in America the whole time, we've had to already do twice as much, learn twice as much, get twice as many degrees, be the highest achiever to just come near some of our counterparts. And the innocence of where I come from, what I bring to the table, and what I've gained is not always the only fight, because we're all fighting for the same thing. I can't say where all of it comes from, but we have divides for so many reasons. One side of the track instead of the other side of the track. We have issues of our own within our denomination, within our race. I felt really rough last week. I just really couldn't even pull myself to be there. But while we're protesting about what happened to Floyd, I was experiencing Black on Black crime where a kid was shot and a funeral had to be done in the midst of this. So we have many issues among ourselves. And that's why I said in the beginning, y'all, we can't fight each other. We have to admit first that there's a divide, and then try to find a way to come together. Let's learn about each other. Let's understand the fight that we're all having, not just some of us.
Abby, you're on mute.
Mute.
I unmuted myself and muted again. Okay, Dr. Harrington, did you have anything to add to that? Or, and you are the one on mute.
Yes, I think I'm back with you now.
Yes, did you
racism,
have anything, just briefly?
Let me just say that racism is discrimination, prejudice, antagonism, and whereby the two panelists have already spoken on those issues because they cross-reference themselves in color and in one's dealing with someone else. But to go into that a little more deeply, I think might be a whole different forum. But I agree with what the two panelists have already said. Could I transition, or would you wait? Would you like for me to wait until you make comments, Abby?
No, you can go ahead and transition.
I want to reflect and sort of piggyback on something you said at the beginning of this forum. You said one thing that we cannot do is believe that we can sit still and give out of gas. We have to keep on. We've only just begun to commence to attempt to try to start. We have to, I keep referring back to scriptural texts because the Bible says, don't be weary in well-doing. And what I like about it is it says, if you're not weary in well-doing, you'll reap if you faint not. I don't plan to give up, give out. I hope the rest of us have the same sort of philosophy because we're in the heat of it right now. As uncomfortable as it may seem, we're in the heat of it. And I just believe that while this heat is rising and while it's getting hot around us, that something good is going to come out of it. It had to get to this point. Something had to happen to get everybody's attention once again. It's almost like the 60s. It's almost like the civil rights movement. We're tired of it now. Young people are even more tired than maybe some of the elderly people. And they are a little less patient than others have been. But Abby, it takes forums like this and coming together with scholarship and everybody like we're doing right now to start making a difference. We have to get everybody's attention. I don't think that we need to be bashful about it. And personally, I want to thank you for taking this kind of step that will allow us to walk behind you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harrington, for that. Was that your kind of 2-minute wrap for us? Or because like I said, we're getting to the tail end, and as we conclude, I know there's some questions out there that we may not have reached or may have not touched, but we will still continue the conversation. Although, as you conclude, I want each of our speakers to wrap up in about a couple minutes, but as you're doing that, a question came through where someone was asking if there is a book or some reading material or a song or something that you could recommend that we take home tonight and continue to work on. And something that you said, Reverend Caldwell, that I'm still thinking about it, is what is the ask? What is the ask? So I'm asking you, what is the ask for tonight? What should we be taking away from this and take home as we continue to fight this fight and build on what we're learning tonight? So if each one of you could just take a couple minutes and help us tonight as we wrap up, and then we will stay behind, as we said earlier, we'll stay to continue with the questions and answers and just general conversations. When we get back, after I mute, I would like Waganda to go first, and then we'll have Dr. Harrington, and then the Reverend, you're going to wrap the evening for us. How about that?
So am I on now? Well, I'd like to thank the moderators of this forum. And it's always good, like Bob Marley said, to see all of us come together and talk about what affects all of us and share our experiences. I think it's important to know that we really don't have much differences. We are all one, and we are all the same, be it within a cultural context or within a local context. We have to know that we are one, whether you come from Africa or whether we are here. These same issues that we're working on here, I think, makes us also think about what we can do to make Africa or Kenyans or Africans aware of the same issues, knowing that tribalism is just as bad, knowing that those kind of issues amongst ourselves, like Dr. Harrington say, it could be a whole totally different forum for this. But we also have to be aware that tribalism is just as bad as racism, and police brutality is the same everywhere, whether it's in Nairobi, whether it's in London, whether it's in Minneapolis, whether it's in North Carolina. Police brutality takes away our dignity, and especially when it's against us as Black people. So for me, I am a Rastafarian and I do listen to reggae music. I would suggest that if some of you listen to reggae music, there's a lot of music, reggae music that talks about your own awareness. Like if you listen to Bob Marley, is very good at that. The redemption songs, it talks about emancipate yourself from this mental slavery that we might be in, because none but ourselves can figure that out for ourselves. And we have to realize that we can't stop the time, and we have to keep on fighting. There's no end. We have to keep on fighting for our dignity We have to make sure that we have the love. We do it in a manner that is loving, and we have to be righteous about what we're doing, and read what we need to read. If we have to, now that you always hear you say, now you've been given power to read. It's up to us now to educate ourselves. It's up to us to educate each other. It's up to us to point each other and to build each other up. And I know sometimes these are very, very big questions on us. We just have to be courageous. You can imagine if somebody looks at me for the first time, and I only know that how they react if they don't know who I am. But not unless I start talking to them and letting them know who I am, I can get rid of that prejudice that they have just because of how I look. And so I'd like to thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to talk to you guys, to learn a lot from you. Dr. Elimelda, thank you very much for inviting me. Luvaga, and everyone, Dr. Carrington and the Reverend, all of you, Judith, and everybody who talked tonight, and those who also just listen. I'm very proud to be part of this, and I want to let you know that in any which way that I can, I like to engage. I'm also a musician, so if any of you plays instrument, maybe this is the time to write a few things. So thank you very much.
What an interesting way to transition into the closing remarks that I hope to offer. I just want to give something that can be taken away, is I think that's what you had mentioned to this transition. As you very well know, I'm a musician, and that's my first area of study. And it's Charles Tindley, who originally wrote the piece, "We Shall Overcome." It's not in the book as "We Shall Overcome." It's recorded as "We Will Overcome." From that original tune, the original lyrics comes "We Shall Overcome," that has been done all during these protest moments. I think a song like that is something that is still encouraging even now globally. We have to have some sort of hope. We shall overcome. Also, it's Bernice Reagan who has done that memorial research on protest music, and of course, "Sweet Honey in the Rock." All those songs that are the Smithsonian that represent the historical evolution of protest. And it was just today that I happened to have run over two distinct articles. One was by Marlene Watson, and another one is by Rachel Asproff, that talk about the state of racism and discrimination as it speaks to us even right now. Now, I guess where I want to culminate all of this is by saying this. We have to find ways of survival. And through our music, Brother Waganda, and through and by performance, we have always had something to sort of grab hold to. What makes us a little different is that we have a little bit of forced academic underpinnage that makes us see back. I guess we can look behind us, look beside us, and still look futuristically, because we can't help but reflect on what has happened to us historically and see where we are now. But I hope that those two scholars that I mentioned, the fact that Charles Tindley back in 1920 and during that era had the gumption to write "We Will Overcome," and for us to sing it in the 60s and to still sing it in 2020. And it's appropriate because it gives us hope that we can come out of this. And that's what I want to leave us with tonight, is that we have to have hope that this is going to pass and that things are going to be better, but we have to do our part to bring it into fruition. Thank you so much.
I would like to start off by saying we are our brothers and sisters' keeper. So we have a responsibility. One person at a time can make a change. My responsibility where I sit is for the well-being and equality, economic state of the people I serve. As pastor, I serve. It is my responsibility to inform, to keep encouraging, to inspire the community to think beyond the immediate care of their soul here on earth and seek a destiny and an eternal home. It's my responsibility to pray, to proclaim the word of God, to help those that are captive to be set free. There is one higher than I, and I look above and not below. We got to press toward the mark of the higher calling. The race is not given for those that run fast or swift, but it's for all of us that endure. I say to you tonight, endure and press on and keep on believing.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Right now, I would like to hand over the program to Professor Ngeri to conclude. I know there's some announcements, and I believe the case of president is out there somewhere. I wasn't scrolling through to see who else is here. But Professor Ngeri, why don't you take over from me? And I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and sharing in this conversation, and to the excellent panelists. Remember, I told you at the very beginning, we did have a treat for you, and sure indeed, I know I did not. I wasn't just making that up, and our speakers did not disappoint. So we are full of hope, and we are full of energy, and we are really hungry to get out there and do and practice some of what you've really enriched us with tonight. So I really appreciate you coming, and hopefully you'll come back to join us, because we need you. We need each other, like you all said. And I think if we all work together, we shall overcome. And I do believe we shall be able to do that. So Professor Ngeri, why don't you take over from me? And I believe you can usher us into the next steps. And thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lubaga, for moderating this session. I want to say many thanks to our panelists, Dr. Caldwell, Dr. Harrington, and Mr. Waganda. I mean, this is a whole evening you've spent with us. I know there were better things for you to do, but we really feel like this is such an important moment in our lives, and we're in this together. So we can't sit and wait for somebody else to bring the change that we desire to have. Personally, and a lot of us here, Kenyans, have benefited. We came here to go to really great schools, but we went to those schools because they were integrated. People fought and died for that to happen. Somebody earlier talked about historically Black colleges and the role they play. Activism is literally embedded in their DNA. They've worked hard, they've developed scholars and activists and politicians. People fought to make a difference. Many of us are here, some may be thinking of retiring and going back to Kenya, but this is where we are now. And if you remember the song, brighten the corner where you are. So we are here now. So what can we do to make this country, to make our town, to make the environment in our neighborhood better? All of us have different platforms. I know, George, you are here, you work in industry. Many of us here are academicians. Omara, you are a businessman. So you have different spheres that God has planted in. So what are we going to do? We have to initiate these conversations. We can't be afraid. So I pray that we'll be energized, that God will give us his grace and sustain us and help us to have the courage to speak, to do what we have to do to make this country a little better, to hand our children something better than what we have now. Thank you again so much, and we'll go to the next session where we can have free flow of questions. Thank you, and God bless you all.